showdown before the raid, FBI agents and prosecutors argued over Trump.
Objection.
It's pretty clear from this article that there was a resistance on the part of the FBI to actually look at the president or pursue that case vigorously. And although you can't comment on it, the article does suggest that FBI agents want to just close the case because the ex-president made an assertion that a search had been made. Now, we had Mr. D'Antuono in as a witness, and he testified 4 times that the Mar-a-Lago search had adequate probable cause. Do you agree with that statement?
That the search had probable cause?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you. And so you don't have any dispute that there was probable cause for this warrant. I just want to say, before going to my next question, that over and over again, the FBI delayed and showed unprecedented caution before investigating the ex-president, even when there was a potential threat to national security. That's my view. That's very far from the assertion that there was unfair targeting.
Can I, on that point, if I may, while I can't discuss any specific investigation, my expectation for all of our investigations, repeatedly communicated to all of our people, and this is especially important in sensitive investigations, is that our folks take great pains to be rigorous, professional, objective, following all our policies and procedures, and do the work in the right way. And sometimes that's frustrating to others.
My time is almost up. I want to ask you another question. In the Senate hearing, in response to Senator Wyden's question of whether the FBI is currently purchasing Americans' location data, you indicated that it was limited to data derived from internet advertising. It's since been reported that the FBI has admitted it bought U.S. location data. Is the FBI purchasing location data from commercial sources without a warrant?
This is an area that requires a little more precision and context for me to be able to answer that fully, so let me have my staff follow back up with you so that I make sure that I don't leave something important out.
I'll just close with the FBI had 3.4 million backdoor searches of the FISA database without a warrant in 2021. Can you say whether the FBI is continuing to search the FISA database without a warrant for Americans?
Well, if you're asking about our use of 702 queries, those are, there is no warrant requirement under the Fourth Amendment for those queries. It's fairly well settled. The 3.4 million figure that you're talking about, I guess I would say a couple things. One, that's not 3.4 million people. That's 3.4 million search terms or query terms. Second, that's not those are not queries in violation of rules. Those are just queries under the
My time has expired, but the committee will look into the warrant requirement later.
We sure will. We sure will. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
The American people need to understand what just happened. My Democrat colleague just asked the director of the FBI whether or not they are buying information about our fellow Americans. And the answer is, well, we'll just have to get back to you on that. Sounds really complicated. But I have other questions. I'm sitting here with my father. I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Sounds like a shakedown, doesn't it, Director?
I'm not going to get into commenting on that.
You seem deeply uncurious about it, don't you? Almost suspiciously uncurious. Are you protecting the Bidens?
Absolutely not. The FBI does not and has no interest in
You won't answer the question about whether or not
politically.
that's a shakedown, and everybody knows why you won't answer it. Because to the millions of people who will see this, they know it is. And your inability to acknowledge that is deeply revealing about you. But let's go from the uncurious to the downright nosy. How many illegal FISA queries have occurred under your leadership of the FBI?
Well, there are reports that have come out with different numbers about compliance incidents.
More than 1 million illegal ones? Because that's what the Inspector General said. The Inspector General said that in the 3.4 million of these queries, more than 1 million were in error. Do you have any basis to disagree with that assessment by the Inspector General?
I'm not sure actually that's a correct characterization of the Inspector General's findings on that.
The internet will remind you of that in moments. But let's now go to what the court said. The court said it was over 200,000 that have occurred on your watch. Do you have any basis to disagree with that assessment?
Again, I don't have the numbers I sit here right now. What I can
Seems
tell
like
you,
a number you should know. How many times the FBI is breaking the law under your watch, especially if it's like over 1 million, to not know that number? And I'm worried about your veracity on the subject as well. Play the video.
letters for
you going to the
investigation
FISA
of
court?
the Capitol.
Or you
I don't
going-
believe FISA is remotely implicated in our investigation.
So there, Senator Lee's asking you whether or not FISA was in any way involved in your January 6th investigation, and you say no. Was that truthful?
I said that I did not believe it was.
Okay, so now let's pull up what the court said, which was something a little different than what you said. So here, no, that's not the right one. Yeah, here we go, right there. It says, the government has reported additional significant violations of the querying standard, including several relating to the January 6, 2021 breach at the Capitol. So I guess the question, Director Wray, is, did you not know when you were answering these questions that the FBI was engaging in these illegal searches, or did you perjure yourself to Senator Lee?
I certainly didn't perjure myself. At the time that I testified in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I didn't have that piece of information. I will add...
Well, that was a court order. You didn't have that piece of information because the court hadn't yet rendered a judgment. Did you not know when you gave the untruthful answer before Senator Lee that this was going on?
It was a truthful answer. I did not believe FISA had been involved in the January 6th.
But it was. So you didn't... The answer is the FBI has broken so bad that people can go and engage in queries that when you come before the Congress to answer questions, you're like blissfully ignorant. You're blissfully ignorant as to the unlawful queries. You're blissfully ignorant as to the Biden shakedown regime. And it just seems like it gets into a kind of a creepy place as well. Go to our next image on what the court said. Like, just so the American people realize, the court has smacked you down, ruling FBI personnel apparently conducted queries for improper personal reasons. People were looking themselves up. They were looking their ex-lovers up. Who has been held accountable or fired as a consequence of the FBI using the FISA process as their like creepy personal snoop machine?
There have been instances in which individuals have had disciplinary action and who are no longer with it. I can't get into it here, but we can follow back up with it.
But don't you see that that's kind of the thing, Director Wray, that you preside over the FBI that has the lowest level of trust in the FBI's history? People trusted the FBI more when J. Edgar Hoover was running the place than when you are. And the reason is because you don't give straight answers. You give answers that later a court deems aren't true. And then at the end of the day, you won't criticize an obvious shakedown when it's directly in front of us. And it appears as though you're whitewashing the conduct of corrupt people.
Respectfully, Congressman, in your home state of Florida, the number of people applying to come work for us and devote their lives working for us is up over 100%.
We're deeply proud of them, and they deserve better than you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Director Wray. I thank you for continuing to serve with all of these attempts to sully your name, suggest you've committed crimes, and you've done an excellent job as FBI Director. I don't agree with everything you've done, but mostly I do, and I think the FBI is our premier law enforcement agency, and I support law enforcement. To attack the FBI is to attack law enforcement in general. A few days after Mar-a-Lago, there was some individual went after the Cincinnati headquarters of the FBI. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you think that came about?
So the incident that you're asking about was obviously deeply disturbing. We had an individual wearing a tactical vest, armed with an AR-style rifle and a nail gun, who attempted to forcibly enter and attack our Cincinnati field office. A subsequent review of the subject's devices and online postings identified a pretty striking anti-FBI, anti-federal law enforcement hostility. He was calling on others to kill federal law enforcement, claiming that he felt he was fighting in his words, civil war. And it's unfortunately part of a broader phenomenon that we have seen, not just against the FBI, and this is important to add, but against law enforcement all across the country. Not just against law enforcement professionals themselves, which is appalling enough, but calling for attacks against their families, which is truly despicable.
And that man eventually was captured and eliminated, was he not?
Yes.
A few days later, was the Arizona FBI department the subject of armed violence, or not violence, but armed protesters?
Well, I know that our Phoenix field office has had a number of very concerning security incidents where people attempted to attack or breach the facility. I can't remember the dates of when that happened, but
all of this has happened kind of in the same sphere. It's been information that's been put out on social media and in just in general, and by members of the Congress, questioning the FBI, questioning law enforcement in general, and this has had a deleterious effect on the safety of FBI officials, and you said others like justice. There was a story the other day, I believe, about people involved in the prosecution of the former president and threats to them, the DOJ personnel as well as FBI. Is that something that's going on presently? Is there efforts to have a unit at the FBI maybe look into how to protect and defend law enforcement personnel who are threatened with violence?
we did stand up a whole dedicated unit to focus on threats to FBI individuals, FBI employees, and FBI facilities because of the uptick that we saw over that time period. The
January 6th, was beyond a weaponization of government. It was a nuclearization of government against the government. I believe I heard that you said that you didn't have any prior notice or reason to believe that there would be such an event on January 6th. Is that correct?
We did not, to my knowledge at least, have prior knowledge of an attempt, a violent overthrow and breach of the Capitol building itself. Certainly we were concerned about and put out a number of products, intelligence products, to partners and others warning of the potential for violence more generally on that date.
So there have been, I think Tucker Carlson and some of the members' colleagues on the other side of the aisle have said that Ray Epps was a secret government agent in helping encourage this crime so as to make the president look bad. Do you have any knowledge of Ray Epps being a secret government agent?
No. I will say this notion that somehow the violence at the Capitol on January 6th was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources and agents is ludicrous and is a disservice to our brave, hardworking, dedicated men and women.
Director, I agree with you. I think the FBI has some of the most talented law enforcement people in our nation and in the world, and they are concerned about safety. They tend to, as I understand it, lean Republican, but they do their job down the line, and that's what they're supposed to do. I'm happy we have the FBI operating in Memphis and other places to work with our police departments and joint units to protect our citizens, and I thank you for your service to the United States, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you. Director, I'm going to follow up on my colleague from Memphis. How many individuals were either FBI employees or people that the FBI had made contact with were in the January 6th entry of the Capitol and surrounding area?
So I really need to be careful here talking about where we have or have not used confidential human sources.
Was there one or more? Was there one or more individuals that would fit that description on January 6th that were in or around the Capitol?
I believe there is a filing in one of the January 6th cases that can provide a little more information about this, and I'm happy to see if we can follow back up with you.
I just want an answer. Was there one or more? I mean, you would know if there was at least one individual who worked for the FBI who entered the Capitol on that day.
I can't, again, I just can't speak to that here, but I'm happy to get the court filing that.
Look, it's been
that
2
deals with this
years,
issue.
and you're now come before us. The gentleman asks these questions, makes all kinds of insinuations, and you nod your head yes, and then I ask you simply, was there one or more? And you won't answer that. So I'm going to make the assumption that there was more than one, more than 5, more than 10, and that you're ducking the question because you don't want to answer for the fact that you had at least one and somehow missed understanding that some of the individuals were very dangerous and that there were others inciting individuals to enter the Capitol after others broke windows. So I'm just going to move on because I think it is time to move on past January 6th. I just, seems that the other side won't. You're a near cabinet level individual. You enjoy a term in Senate confirmation. Do you feel comfortable speaking to other members, either cabinet level or sub-cabinet level, when appropriate, to resolve problems within the government?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so when the FBI censored the United States government, you wouldn't have to just take it down by calling Meta or Google, would you?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm following the question.
Are you familiar with the official verified Russian language account of the United States Department of State that was taken down at your agency's request?
That doesn't ring a bell as I sit here right now, no.
Okay, well, now you have something to take back and look at.
Okay.
Because, in fact, in this bundle that SBU constantly was submitting to various agencies was, in fact, a Russian language statement of the government. Literally, you took down the free speech of the Department of State.
So,
yes, go
you
ahead.
mentioned SBU. I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing, but I will endeavor to provide a little more context, at least as to SBU.
Yes.
I believe what you may be referring to, but I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing, is that when Russia invaded Ukraine, the Security Service of Ukraine, the SBU, which is a long-standing good partner of the FBI, asked us for help on a whole range of things. And one of those things was to contact U.S. companies on their behalf because the Russians, the invasion, had cut off the Ukrainians' communications. And so we did pass through information from the SBU to social media.
Are you also familiar with the fact that President Zelensky has had to clean house at the SBU?
I know there have been a number of personnel changes.
Okay. Well, we'll follow up with this in more detail. The question I have for you is, you're the premier law enforcement operation, and you're a former Department of Justice, high-ranking executive at all levels. So would you agree that the job of the FBI is criminal investigation?
Is criminal investigation and to protect the country from national security threats, those two things.
So the idea that you take information and you have it taken down, use your authority and the leverage you have to have Meta, Google, Facebook, or Facebook being Meta, or Twitter, take down people's information on things like where COVID came from. Where do you find the national security interest in that? Where do you find the interest in free speech of American citizens being taken down? And I repeat, free speech of American citizens. Where do you have that authority?
So we don't ask social media companies to censor information or suppress information when it comes to national security threats, certainly. So what we do is alert them when some other intelligence agency gives us information about a foreign intelligence service being behind some account. We will call social media companies' attention to that. But at the end of the day, we're very clear that it's up to the social media companies to decide whether to do something
The
about it or
suggestion
not,
of the
whether to
most
tell us
powerful
about it.
law enforcement operation is not a suggestion. It is, in fact, effectively an order. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are here today because MAGA Republicans will do anything to protect Donald Trump, their savior, no matter how unfounded or dangerous it may be to do so. Welcome to the legislative arm of the Trump re-election campaign. A grand jury found probable cause that, among other crimes, Trump illegally kept highly sensitive national security documents which could put our country and others and our sources in danger if they got out, and which photographs show Trump kept those records in bathrooms, showers, closets, and in the Mar-a-Lago ballroom. MAGA Republicans are afraid that the justice system might hold Trump accountable for his actions. So to protect him, Republicans are trying to intimidate FBI officials. And in case that does not work, Republicans are trying their hardest to discredit the FBI in the eyes of the American public. When Trump lost in 2020, they tried to make Americans distrust their election systems. And now that the FBI and the Justice Department have sought to hold Trump to the same standard any other American citizen would be held to, MAGA Republicans are telling Americans not to trust the FBI. To protect Trump, Republicans are trying to distract us from the real work that the FBI does every day, which is fighting violent criminals, child predators, and fighting domestic terrorists and extremists so as to protect our democracy and our national security. And even worse, MAGA Republicans are stirring up threats that pose a danger to the safety of FBI employees. It's past time that Republicans realize the consequences of their words and put the good of this country over politics. Now, Director Wray, I want to thank you for your service during a time of unprecedented travail. Director Wray, you were a partner at an international law firm before you took a drastic pay cut to accept the job of FBI director. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's something my wife reminds me of from time to time.
And but let me ask you this, sir. And you took this office after Trump fired the former FBI director, Jim Comey, correct?
Yes, sir.
And did you contact the Trump administration to offer yourself for this job, or did the administration recruit you for the job?
They contacted me and asked me if I would be willing to consider taking on the role.
So Trump handpicked you to be the FBI director,
Yes.
and he expected you to do what he wanted you to do, correct?
Well, that I can't speak to. I can tell you the same thing I
Well,
told
I'll
him,
put it
which
like
is that
this.
I'm going to do this job by the book.
He's unhappy with you now, isn't he?
I'll let him speak for himself.
Well, I think a lot of his acolytes here reflect his intent at this particular time. Director Wray, are you aware that MAGA Republicans have repeatedly called for the FBI to be defunded?
I have heard some of that language.
In fact, Republicans on this very committee have said that your institution should be dismantled. Isn't that correct?
Well, I think certain members have.
And one member even tweeted, quote, defund and dismantle the FBI, end quote. Another told Fox News that, quote, Republicans should defund the bureaucracy, end quote. And a third told the press that he thinks the FBI, quote, needs to be split up and moved out into pieces, end quote. Those are direct quotes and only a small sample of what's out there. Can you briefly describe for us what the effect would be on our national security and on our domestic tranquility if the FBI were to be defunded or dismantled?
Well, certainly it would be disastrous for 38,000 hardworking career law enforcement professionals and their families, but more importantly, in many ways. It would hurt our great state and local law enforcement partners who depend on us every day to work with them on a whole slew of challenging threats. It would hurt the American people, neighborhoods and communities all across this country, the people we're protecting from cartels, violent criminals, gang members, predators, foreign and domestic terrorists, cyber attacks. I could go on and on. The people it would help would be those same violent gangs and cartels, foreign terrorists, Chinese spies, hackers, and so forth.
A member.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Colorado.